Hey guys, welcome back to another Zella podcast. Today we have a very special guest. Here today with me is Bobby Lee. Bobby Lee is a serial entrepreneur. He is the founder of Ballet Wallet, and also he was the CEO and founder of BTC China, one of the first exchanges in 2011. And now he has recently come out with a new book known as the book Promise of Bitcoin. And you can see that Bobby is really a big advocate of Bitcoin. Bitcoin recently just hit its all-time high, so we're going to dive all in that today. Bobby, welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Daniel, for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, excited to have you. So I wanted to ask you, what inspired you to write about the promise of Bitcoin?
So I think the most important thing is Bitcoin itself is a very amazing technology and platform. You know, it's a platform. It's a digital platform for money, right? For real money and transaction value. It's been around for a long time now. You know, I got in really early in 2011. Back then Bitcoin was barely, just 2 years old, if you will, and now it's coming up to its 16th anniversary. We just passed the 16th. We just had the 16th anniversary of the Bitcoin white paper just last week, in fact. So it's very exciting, but at the same time, Bitcoin has been a mystery to a lot of people. Right? Even though it's been around, it's been in the media for the last 10, 12 years. But for many people just don't fully understand what's the big deal about Bitcoin. And for that reason, I decided to write a book about it so that when people come to me and say, hey, Bobby, could you tell me more about Bitcoin? Where can I learn more about it? Why is it such a big deal? Why is it a global, currency asset class? Why do you think the price would go up? Why is it so valuable? And my book here, The Promise of Bitcoin, hopefully can give some good answers to people.
So Bitcoin recently just hit its all-time high, and it's now becoming a renowned asset. But I want to take us back to 2011, and sort of like the younger years of Bobby, because you were in quite early, as you said. You're in quite early into Bitcoin. So what was the environment, or how did you actually come to learn about Bitcoin, and what was it like growing up that led you to starting the first Chinese exchange?
So I learned about Bitcoin in 2011, early through my brother. Actually, my brother Charlie Lee. He's also very famous in the crypto world. He ended up he got into Bitcoin in early 2011, like myself, and he also ended up creating Litecoin. So that was his creation. So the question was, I got into, at the time I was working for Walmart. I was working for Walmart's global e-commerce division, helping launch a e-commerce platform in China. So I've been in tech all my career. I studied computer science at Stanford University. I worked in Silicon Valley after college. I worked at Yahoo. And then I worked a few tech jobs that ended up being at Walmart in 2011. And that's when I discovered Bitcoin. So the reason I got started with the Bitcoin exchange, BTC China, was kind of coincidence. I think a year and a half later, I left Walmart and I was looking for my next job, if you will. And at the time, I was in Shanghai, living in Shanghai, and I thought that the sort of standard tech management job, more of them would be possible in Beijing. So, whether or not I want to move to Beijing versus stay in Shanghai. And then I thought that maybe I should go back to my passion, which is to maybe do a startup in the field of Bitcoin. And I decided to plunge in. I met my co-founders of BTC China. We got together and started that in the spring of 2013. So we launched it as a formal sort of venture-backed startup. We got the first fundraising in Asia of all crypto companies, and then the rest is history.
What was it like growing up? I guess like back in 2011 and around that time. You said that your brother was also the founder of Litecoin. So what was it like being in such a small ecosystem in comparison to how it is today?
It was very much hobbyist ecosystem. The early industry people were mostly miners, people who would put together graphics cards or FPGA boards to mine Bitcoin. So this is pre-ASIC. Okay, this is a little after CPU mining. It was GPU mining, FPGAs. So I mined in the summer of 2011, getting ATI graphics cards, uh, and putting them on a motherboard, running them 24/7. Running the Bitcoin mining software. It's all command line. It was a Linux operating system, so a lot of tweaking, a lot of hands-on stuff. And yeah, it was fun. It was a very hobbyist mentality. At the time, there were very very few. The whole altcoin, seeing the tokens, all of that was really early. So I remember, there were just a handful of other coins that were sort of forked from the Bitcoin source code with a different name and so on. And I think my brother, he got the idea. That's how he started Litecoin later that year. Yeah.
And what gave you the conviction in the beginning to sort of bet on Bitcoin? Because it was something that was quite early. Maybe the adoption was mainly used for something that wasn't quite common, not common transactions. What gave you the conviction to then really go more into BTCC?
Yeah. So to be honest, I didn't really bet fully into Bitcoin until 2013. Okay, so when I started in 2011, it was very much a hobbyist. Like I said, I was just mining coins. I didn't actually buy any Bitcoins until a bit later. Um, so it was more of a hobbyist to say, hey, can there be a digital currency that has value, that is not centralized and issued by a single party? I think if you recall, I used to work at Yahoo, and we had Yahoo Points and sort of online currency point system, but that was centralized and issued by the company, by Yahoo. And there were many, many competitors doing the same thing in the US and Silicon Valley and abroad as well. So a lot of these companies issuing points, digital currencies that are centrally issued by the company, maintained in a fancy database. But there was no concept of a decentralized crypto thing. So when we first heard about Bitcoin, my brother and I, we thought back to the days of our investing in gold, right? We used to invest in gold, collecting gold coins. And the question is, what gives gold value? Gold is also a decentralized asset class. It happens to be a precious metal, but there are many countries, central banks that would mint gold coins, but gold itself is a natural commodity. So you don't go to some company and say, hey, make some gold for me, right? It's not centralized like that. So gold is found everywhere on Earth. So in the same sense, Bitcoin can be mined everywhere on Earth as long as there's power, equipment, and the internet connection. So there are many similarities. And for the same reason, Bitcoin is valuable not because it's backed by any government or centralized authority. In fact, that was one of the early talking points. A lot of the naysayers would complain that Bitcoin has no value. It can't be valuable because there's no government, behind it, right? But in my perspective, and I talk about it in my book, it's precisely the fact that it's not backed by anyone that Bitcoin is valuable, because for that reason, no one can take the value away from you as long as you understand the sort of properties of Bitcoin. The fact that it's limited in issuance, the 21 million limit, and the fact that it's decentralized, it's free to use. There's no permission needed. You can create your own Bitcoin address without asking and applying for an account. Those are the factors that really make Bitcoin valuable as a store of value, as an asset class. So I sort of, took me a few years to really figure that out fully for myself, and then I dived in and dedicated my career into Bitcoin. That's when I jumped into to be a co-founder of BTC China, which later we renamed ourselves BTCC.
And fast forward, 2013, you went all in. You started to focus and do a lot of work on BTCC. Fast forward about 5 years later, you sold the company. So what was the experience like, considering you were quite early in the space and then you decided to exit, whereas a lot of other people right now are coming into the exchange space. Sort
Yeah.
of, what was the difference between the time when you decided to sell and the environment now, and what was like the considerations that took place there?
Yeah, mainly we got acquired. So the acquisition offer came in, I think it was late 2017, and that just happened to be the market peak. Um, so we decided to go through with the acquisition. So we sold BTCC. And also, it was a time right after we wound down and closed off the China internal business. So we sold the BTCC international company with the mining pool and all that, the exchange. But the internal Chinese portion was actually shut down in the fall of 2017. So it's a mixed feeling. Obviously, looking back, it was a great experience. I think running an exchange, we became the world's largest exchange by trading volume. So the very first exchange, the big one, was actually MT Gox. So they were the dominant exchange for a few years, from 2000, I think maybe 10 or 11 to 2000. They closed down essentially in early 2014. Sorry, early 2000, yeah, early 2014. That's right. But even by 2013, BTC China, we overtook them. And this is more than 10 years ago, 11 years ago. We overtook them and became the world's largest exchange by trading volume. Um, the the so today, exchange businesses, first of all, there's so many now, right? Because of the international decentralized nature, it's hard. It's actually hard to regulate exchanges because they can sort of arbitrage regulatory regimes by pulling out of a country and moving to a different country per se. But it's all accessed over the internet using web browsers or mobile apps. So it's really hard to pin it down. It kind of has a problem that online gambling casinos have, right? So in fact, there's a lot of similarity. You could argue that Bitcoin and crypto exchange are a form of online casino, right? Digital cryptocurrency casinos. Um, so it's like a whack-a-mole, right? So if a country wants to outlaw exchanges, they really have to do a lot of, banning IP addresses or really have a strict regime where you punish the people who violate and put them to jail and stuff like that. So the U.S. has a very strict regime on cryptocurrency compared to many countries who have no rules whatsoever. So in any case, China turned out to be a very strict regime as well, and then they actually banned all exchanges in the fall. That was in September of 2017. And then many of these Chinese exchanges, they moved offshore, off of mainland China. They go into Hong Kong, they went to Japan, and they end up in Bermuda, in Dubai, ended up in all these other countries, Southeast Asia as well. A lot of them in Korea, in Japan. I'm sure in almost all of the countries have their own exchanges, right? So it's a tough thing, and without regulation, there's no rules, right? So a lot of people and exchanges get caught up with money laundering, not necessarily on purpose, but they get trapped into it, and some actually do illegally abet and aid in money laundering. So some exchanges take a sort of hands-off approach and just let it happen, right? And people have gone to jail for that, right? People get caught and go to jail for that. It's a tough business. Like that's probably the best way to summarize it. Yeah.
And so later on, you sold, sort of started to create the deal around 2017. That's around the same time that China started to ban uh, Bitcoin and some of the cryptocurrencies. During that time, was there conversations with the government about whether it was something that needed to be banned, or considering that you guys were very early on in the space, was there regulatory conversations and considerations between the exchanges and the government, or was it just a pure decision from the government to close it down?
That's a very good perspective. So in theory, we had conversations with government members of the government. Since 2013, if you look at the early part of crypto and Bitcoin history, China played a big part in the early days from 2000 2013, I would say, starting until 2017. Those 4 or 5 years, China and Asia had the bulk of the trading volume for Bitcoin. And so we were very close with the government, the local government in Shanghai, the financial management, the banks and all that. We keep in touch with them and find out what's going on, give advice, advocate. But the reality in China, the government is a communist body, right? Political party. And it's in many ways an authoritarian sort of government style. So in that sense, they, it's one thing you can talk to them, but in the end, they don't have to listen to you, right? They make their own decisions in terms of what they feel is the best for the country. And from that perspective, I can see, and now I can see, understand that for a country that wants control over its economy and financial system, they don't want something like Bitcoin to be successful, because Bitcoin actually gives control back to the people, to the users, right? So it's at odds, if you will, with a centralized, centrally planned, authoritarian government's perspective. That's why if you look at the world, I think this is almost always true, which is authoritarian countries tend to ban and limit their citizens in terms of using cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. Whereas Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies can only be truly free to use in democracies, right? So I think it's a telltale sign, right? Whether you're an authoritarian country versus your true democracy in terms of your approach to allowing your citizens to use Bitcoin, right? To use it, to invest in it, to hold it, and so on and so forth. So no surprise, China came out banning it. But to be honest with you, up until the spring and summer of 2017, we thought we were this close to getting a license for running a legitimate licensed cryptocurrency exchange in China. We were one of the 3 finalists who were asked to request for comments on their licensing policy. So we had the draft copies. We went back and forth with them, and so it felt like it was an abrupt decision in the summer of 2017 where they were about to. I guess there are 2 factions in the government. This is my assumption. There's one faction that was for it, that was in favor of legitimizing and licensing exchanges, and they picked 3 to give us licenses. We had to apply for it and all that, and then somehow that group of people maybe lost their power or lost their conviction, and then the other group of people who want to ban it won out, and then the ban came in place in September. So that was announced in September, and that was a very quote unquote bloody day in the sense that the market just crashed, people panicked, and it was quite something. That was in September of 2017.
Well, the Chinese government still holds their stance against cryptocurrencies. Do you think that it's a smart idea, or do you think that their stance will change considering the fact that now even the US is starting to consider holding Bitcoin as a part of their treasury? Yeah.
Well, so I think the US, we just had an election. Donald Trump is going to be our next president. So the crypto industry, everyone's very hopeful and excited, right? Especially the talk about potentially having Bitcoin be part of the national reserve, right? Just like gold, right? And stuff. China, let me say this. I think what China does as a country can be very different than what China allows its people to do. Okay, so it can be a little bit two-faced, right? So in this case, due to the logic I explained earlier, as an authoritarian country who wants that control, who wants that granular control of its currencies and policies and economies and foreign currency controls, right? China has foreign currency controls, right? China's native currency, the renminbi, the Chinese yuan, is not a freely exchangeable currency. because China has international foreign reserves, euros, US dollars, and gold, and so on. But they limit who can exchange it. They limit their citizens on a yearly per capita basis how much money you can exchange in and out of foreign currencies, right? So given that stance, I think, and also given that the whole authoritarian nature of the government, until that changes, I don't see China changing its policy for digital currencies for its citizens. Okay, so in other words, I think for the near term and the foreseeable future under this sort of system, um, digital currencies like Bitcoin will be out of bounds for citizens. With the exception, they might allow just a yearly quota, just like they do for US dollars. Okay. So today in China, if you bring US dollars, you can only exchange so much per year or per day in and out of US dollars into Chinese RMB. So if they do allow it, it will be very strictly controlled with a quota system. However, as a country, China has vast reserves of gold. People say China's gold reserves, which are secret, the amount of gold China has, may even have surpassed the U.S. reserves. The U.S. has, what is it, 8,000 tons of gold, 7,000, 8,000. By the way, we still haven't seen an audit of that, right? But China could easily have more than 10,000 tons of gold in reserves right now. So they haven't announced a figure in a long time. So in that sense, if the global sort of economy and the world sort of shifts to a reserve system that incorporates Bitcoin, I don't expect China to miss that boat. I think the policymakers in China are very smart. They would start accumulating Bitcoin, and that's sort of what we're seeing, right? We're seeing nation states now accumulating Bitcoin. So in the early days, it was hobbyists, and then it was true investors and family offices, right? And then we have corporations. The most famous is MicroStrategy, and of course Tesla. I think even SpaceX held Bitcoin at some point, and many companies are starting to hold Bitcoin. Ballet, we hold Bitcoin on our balance sheet, and I think nation states are doing it, right, with El Salvador and a few other countries, and yeah, I mean the U.S. also has a sizable hoard of Bitcoin from its seizures and so on and so forth. So the question is, will countries hold Bitcoin? Today, some countries have Bitcoin just from past seizures from criminal activity. But the question is, will countries actually go out actively, hold a position in Bitcoin and declare it? I think that's going to be the most exciting question in the coming decade.
Yeah, so I think Bitcoin is quite an interesting asset. I wanted to sort of pivot before we dive into more about the economy. I wanted to fast forward once again to today, where you're the founder of Ballet. You mentioned you have Bitcoin on your balance sheet, but Ballet is actually a wallet company at its core, right? You allow other
Correct.
people to hold Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And you could say that an exchange is a semi allows people to hold Bitcoin, but Ballet is decentralized. What's
Correct.
it like?
Correct. Well, let me
what's it like?
go ahead.
running
Ask your
Ballet?
question. I'm going to clarify about Ballet and exchanges, but go ahead. What's it like?
Yeah, I wanted to dig into what's it like with the pivot to running Ballet and sort of why did you decide to get into this space?
Yeah. So Ballet is my second startup, and our marquee product is called the Real Series. It's a cold storage. It's a card. It's made of metal. It's the size of a regular credit card, and it's actually inert in the sense that there's no electronics on here. Okay, the card. This is actually 24 karat gold plated, so it's very nice. Okay, it's very nice. It's very sturdy, and it's waterproof and all that stuff. So there's no electronics, no batteries, no chips, no Bluetooth, NFCs, nothing. Okay, and this card will actually hold your digital currencies, not just Bitcoin, but holds over 1,000 different kinds of coins and NFTs, and it'll hold it for cold storage. And any coins you put on here is cold storage, and this becomes a bearer asset, something very fun, which means that whoever has it has control of it, and there's no passwords, there's no gimmicks, and it's just open standard, industry standard BIP38. Anyone can retrieve the coins once it's held in here, and you can put it in the time lock, time capsule, come back 20 years later, it's still there, the private keys and all that. Um, so we are not a decentralized company. I want to clarify. Every company by nature is centralized. The notion of a company is where people get together to start a business, and that's a centralized thing. Okay. Um, so, but our product is a physical product. Uh, it is what I call self custody. Okay, it's a self custody wallet, if you want to call it like that. It's a self custody cold storage wallet, but it is not a centralized custodial wallet. So exchanges, traditional exchanges, again, ignoring the decentralized stuff like DeFi's inside it. Traditional exchanges, the biggest ones on the market, whether it's Coinbase, Binance, all the other big ones and long running ones. Uh, those are all centralized companies, just like Ballet is. The difference is those exchanges, not only are they centralized, but they also custody user assets. So when you want to buy Bitcoin or sell Bitcoin, you would load the Bitcoin onto the exchange and send it through the blockchain to an address that's provided and designated by the exchange. That's how you load Bitcoin on there. If you were to buy Bitcoin with fiat money, whether it's US dollars, or even USDT, stable coins, you send your money to the exchange via the traditional means, and then you buy the Bitcoin, and the Bitcoin is held there until you withdraw it. Right? So those are custodial, and that's called custody. So they have custody of your coins. And in fact, when I ran BTC China, BTCC, we were also a custodial Bitcoin exchange, right? So we held a lot of people's assets in custody. And back then, the rules were a little bit more relaxed. It wasn't so strict. There weren't formal policies. Today, if you want to run a custodial exchange in many countries, you need a license and all that stuff. So we were pre-license days, if you will. Okay, this is like so many years ago. Over 10 years ago. So what I wanted to say is the reason I started Ballet is I kind of had enough of that, of custodying users' assets. Because when you custody user assets, it's a huge responsibility. You have to hold it safely, and thankfully, nothing got stolen, nothing got hacked, right? But you hear about exchanges getting hacked all the time. So that's why in 2018, after I sold that company, I decided, hey, should I start a new company? And ended up starting Ballet in the January of 2019. And we wanted to start this company because we wanted to create a simple, easy to use cold storage system to allow regular people without all the technical mindset, for them to buy a genuine Ballet card from us, and then they can safely and easily put their crypto on here, whether it's Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, Dogecoin, all the NFTs and all the rare sats and whatever you want. And then it's in cold storage. Once it's here, as long as you don't lose this card, you cannot get hacked remotely, right? As long as you don't touch it, you keep it locked away, no one can take your money from you. Okay. So that's why we started this. And further, me as a founder and CEO, I did not want my company to have the responsibility of holding onto your assets. I want you yourself, all of our Ballet customers, to hold their money on their card. And we as Ballet, because we make these devices, we have no access to the funds inside the devices. That's why we are a non-custodial wallet maker, if you will.
What's it like running a wallet company separate from an exchange?
It's different, right? So there's the good things are there's much less fraud and hacking, right? You're not on on people's target. Uh, it's really satisfying making something physical, right? This is a lot of people don't get to see and hold this in person, but once you hold and feel this in person, it really feels special to be able to feel like, oh wow, I'm holding $1,000 worth of Bitcoin in my hands, or I'm holding $75,000 worth of Bitcoin in my hands, right? So it has heft. So it's a physical device. It's really fun. It's great for gifting. You can load Bitcoin here and give it away as a gift for a birthday, for a wedding, for some special occasion, for children's graduation or whatnot, right? So and this is suitable as gifting for the young and the elderly. You can give people who never had a Bitcoin before. who don't know how to set up a Bitcoin wallet. So it's tremendously satisfying running this company. However, we don't have the same volumes in trading, right? So with exchanges, what you want to induce people to trade because you make commission off of their trades. So there's a lot of activity, a lot of trading. Uh, in some sense, I'm more satisfied running this company, even though we don't have the same revenue structure as exchanges. And the reason is for this company, our ethos is not for you to. This is not a wallet for spending. Okay, people get this wrong. Like when you buy Bitcoin, there's really two use cases. One use case is you want to buy the Bitcoin today and you want to spend it tomorrow for breakfast, or you want to spend it tomorrow to buy coffee at the neighborhood coffee shop, or you want to spend it the next month to buy a car or to buy whatever you want to buy. Okay, transactions or your online VPN service. Okay. However, the second use case is you want to buy Bitcoin or crypto to invest as a longer term investment, whether it's hold it for 3 months, 6 months, or 3 years or 6 years. I buy it for holding it because I know one day the value is going to go up. So I want to buy it now and put it in something like this safely. So Ballet, our company, we cater to that second use case. Okay, so we don't make it easy for you to go in and out. My take is if you want to hold Bitcoin in a wallet for spending, you should just download a mobile app on your phone and do that. Okay, but if you want to buy Bitcoin for investing, then you should use something like Ballet to store it really safe, right? And then by this way, you don't have to rely on an exchange to custody your stuff. Okay. The other thing is Bitcoin itself. Buying Bitcoin, getting onto Bitcoin is hard, right? Many people know this. Like if you're no coiner, if you don't have any coins, how do you buy Bitcoin through an exchange? There's a lot of processes, account opening process, KYC. You have to move the money, so it's a real hassle. Getting onto Bitcoin is a real hassle. So my point is, if it took such a big hassle to get on and buy Bitcoin, why would you want to spend it the next day? You probably want to hold it and invest in it for a few years for the value to go up before you spend it, right? So the product is this for people, yeah.
Can people buy a preloaded Bitcoin wallet from you guys?
Yeah, it turns out we offer that service. It's a small service we offer. We do sell preloaded. We sell preloaded cards with Bitcoin. We also sell coins. I don't have one with me right now, but we make some coins that are preloaded. We only sell it in the U.S. market and only to certain states and jurisdictions. The reason is, again, the U.S. has 50 states. Each state has their own regulation in terms of money transmission, money service business. So based on our own, we didn't spend millions and millions of dollars getting licenses from all the states. The exchanges can afford that, but for us, for our company at our size, we still haven't done that yet. So we only sell it to certain states if you want to load it. But otherwise, you could buy your own and load it yourself, right? It's kind of like that.
I think you made an interesting point just now about the use case of Bitcoin, right? You mentioned that you're sort of targeting the second use case, which is to hold Bitcoin as an interesting value. And now these days, there's literally thousands of different coins. Ethereum is one of them, and stable coins. But the perspective of Bitcoin has sort of changed from the early 2010s to now, that it's no longer used to spend, was it's much more expensive to move Bitcoin from one wallet to the other, and now towards an intrinsic store of value. I'm curious as to sort of because you're very bullish on Bitcoin, but also your Ballet wallet allows you to hold Ethereum and stuff like that. How are you sort of seeing like the trends of cryptocurrency changing throughout the years, and what do you think like the future will hold? Will Ethereum continue to maintain its dominance as sort of like an EVM machine used for coding, and will Bitcoin continue to be maintained as a treasury or a reserve currency? How do you think things will change over the next 5 years, considering that now there's a lot of hype in cryptocurrency?
Yeah. So, by the way, when you say now there's a lot of hype in cryptocurrency, that statement is true for the last 15 years I've been in the industry. I've been in the industry for 13 years, and it's been pretty much true for all of the last 13 and even 15 years. So it's a matter of the magnitude of the hype, right? So Bitcoin, Ethereum. So I'm proud to say I'm a Bitcoin maximalist. I am very, very bullish on Bitcoin. I'm very focused on Bitcoin. So I do have some small holdings of Ethereum. I'm not a big the biggest supporter of that per se. So I can speak more about Bitcoin than I can about Ethereum and all the other coins. But what I can say for sure is Bitcoin and Ethereum are fundamentally different. Even though they both technology-wise uses private key, public key, they use it decentralized. I guess now Ethereum is proof of stake, but they're all decentralized, ledger-based, blockchain-based digital cryptocurrencies, right? But they serve different purposes. Like you said, Ethereum is more of the EVM approach. They a lot of more smart contracts, a lot of more of these abilities on the Ethereum ecosystem. Whereas Bitcoin is very plain vanilla, and it's really only serving one purpose, which is to solve the store value problem. How can you have store value that is digital and yet decentralized, and also at the same time limited in quantity, right? So no other invention has solved that problem. Bitcoin was the first to solve that problem. There are many copycats later who just copy the Bitcoin source code and launch their own network, right? But the reality is Bitcoin's the biggest because Bitcoin was the first to solve that problem, which is digital store of value that is decentralized, limited, and free to use, right? So Ethereum is not solving that problem. Ethereum has many more bells and whistles. It's solving a different problem. It's solving the problem for people to run EVM smart contracts and all that fun stuff. I myself, I don't use that stuff, so I'm not a daily user of Ethereum, but I'm not saying that's bad or anything. It's just different. Okay, so for an outsider, for a typical outsider, they might think of Bitcoin, Ethereum just like gold and silver, just different kinds of the same thing. But from my perspective, who's a hardcore Bitcoin fan, I think Bitcoin is very, very different. So I think Bitcoin is the true form of money, whereas Ethereum, is something else, if you will. And then all the other coins and projects are even other things, So that's why they're more and more niche.
Yeah. Do you think that the fundamental sort of like price action or the way that the markets will move with Bitcoin will fundamentally change, considering there are now sort of proxy-like versions of Bitcoin, one of them being the ETF. Coinbase has recently come out with BTCC. It's sort of like a centralized approach towards holding Bitcoin. But how do you think that institutional money will sort of impact Bitcoin, and how will it impact the retail market who is holding Bitcoin?
That's a good question. So in the end, Bitcoin, however many flavors, whether it's in ETFs, whether it's in something like CBBTC, or even like what they call the wrapped BTC, WBTC, in the end, you can't make more of the Bitcoin itself. You can wrap it, you can present it, you can slice it and dice it and cut it up, put in different chunks, different sizes. But in the end, there's only 21 million Bitcoins, with each Bitcoin being 100 million Satoshi sats, right? So there's only so many units, right? The smallest unit is one sat, which is 100 million to one in terms of compared to a single Bitcoin. And then there's 21 million of that Bitcoin. So the reason Bitcoin price has gone up so much in the last 13 years, I've seen it, is that it's limited. And the more people who want it, the more valuable you push up the price. It's just natural physics. It's not technically physics, but it's the physics of economy, of monetary principle, right? If you look at the natural rules of physics govern the natural world in terms of physical things and all that. But in terms of economy and math, you understand that when more money chases a limited quantity, then in a free market system, the price of that item goes up, right? So that's why Bitcoin being fungible is very important, right? Whereas NFTs are non-fungible, right? So that's why different NFTs have different prices. If you have a Bored Ape, one of the classics, right? A Bored Ape, there's 10,000 Bored Apes, but not every Bored Ape is priced the same. Even if you buy the expensive one today, if you're forced to sell it, you may not be able to sell it for the same premium. You might have to sell it for the lowest price. Whereas Bitcoin, you buy Bitcoin. Bitcoin is Bitcoin. There's no expensive version of Bitcoin. You just buy Bitcoin and you sell it at the commodity price of Bitcoin, right? There's only shenanigans when people give you fake Bitcoin, right? If people promise you paper Bitcoin, they promise you Bitcoin, they sell you Bitcoin, but they hold it for you. They never let you have it yourself. Then that's shady. That may not be real Bitcoin, right? They may hypothecate it where they sell more than they have. If they have 100 units of Bitcoin, they could sell 105, 110, or even 150 or 200 units of Bitcoin, right? And then, that's bad. So that's why this industry has to be regulated. This industry has to account for people with bad intentions and fraudsters and all that stuff. And there's been a lot of that over the years.
Do you think there's a risk? There's certain risks in the Bitcoin as a monetary system that people would sort of argue for, and I wanted to get your opinion.
Yeah.
One of them being that the rise of quantum computers coming out may help to crack the Bitcoin code. And the second part that I wanted to allude to was sort of like the aggregation of a lot of Bitcoin. So now you have BlackRock, MicroStrategy starting to hold a lot more Bitcoin and coming into real percentages of the total supply of Bitcoin. Is there risk to that?
So both those questions, there's risk at the surface layer, but not real fundamentally to knock out Bitcoin itself. To address your quantum computing is coming. Okay, it's kind of like Y2K. I was in the tech industry before year 2000. I remember we had a big deal, a lot of Y2K projects in the years 1998, 1999, and there was a rollover, and thankfully the world survived, right? Computers still ran. I don't know, some people are not even old enough to be born before Y2K. Same thing with quantum. There's pre-quantum and post-quantum, and we already have the algorithms and the solutions for quantum. And for cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, Ethereum included, we'll just have to upgrade. The fact of the matter is Bitcoin today is not quantum resistant, is not quantum proof. And the day will come where there will be a mass project for all Bitcoin holders, including ETFs, exchanges, including individuals like us, including wallet users, customers of Ballet. We'll just have to upgrade and move the Bitcoin out from the old quantum, the old address to a new quantum proof system address system. Okay. So when that happens, everything will be fine. There will still be only 21 million Bitcoins. And then anything that's lost in the shuffle will get shared by the miners and so on and so forth. Not too big of a deal. So I'm not worried about it. I think in the sense that it's kind of like you don't know when it's going to happen. It's kind of like we in the U.S. we elect the president every 4 years, and now we know whether or not you voted for Donald Trump. Now we know Donald Trump will be the next president, for good or bad, and but we don't know who's going to be president in 2028, right? Who's going to win that election? We don't know who's going to win the election in 2032. Well, but what we do know is there will be a new president, there will be a new election every 4 years, right? So same thing with Bitcoin. We don't know the exact algorithm, the exact method, but what we do know is when the day comes, Bitcoin will upgrade and it will move everything into quantum safe. I have full faith and confidence in that. And when that happens, like I said, all the companies, all the wallets, all the ETFs, all the, they will have to all upgrade around the same time or whatnot. Yeah. And then your second question was about large holders. I'm not worried about that. I think I just read, just recently, all the ETFs combined finally has crossed 1 million Bitcoin in their holdings. And the reality is, there's 19, 20 million Bitcoins out there. They have 1 million, that's like 5%. So it's very, very decentralized. Bitcoin is all the way out there. And there's still many, many rich people who hold a lot of Bitcoin, right? They're like Satoshi himself is supposed to hold over 1 million Bitcoins. But there are other people, still to be named, you don't know who they are, who might have 500,000 Bitcoin, who might have 200,000 Bitcoin. You just don't know who they are, right? So it's not truly centralized. In fact, in the old days, all of our exchanges, when I was running BTC China and all of the exchanges back then, we had over 1 million Bitcoin, right? So, and I think exchanges today have over 1 million Bitcoin. So it's not like the ETF is going to get 18 million out of the 20 million Bitcoin. That's not going to happen, right? So I'm not worried about that.
You mentioned about how Bitcoin will go through an upgrade to become quantum resistant. I think like people who joined cryptocurrency probably in the recent years don't know that Bitcoin was actually forked, right? And sort of had its own change with Bitcoin Cash. How do you sort
Well,
of think that will transpire? With the change in quantum resistant, will people have to change to a new chain? Will there be a voting system? Like, what will actually happen to sort of protect the holders for Bitcoin?
so there's controversy in terms of what you mean by Bitcoin was forked. Okay, the Bitcoin today is still the same Bitcoin from 14, 15 years ago. However, it's upgraded, right? The software has improved, the performance has improved, the functionality has improved, but fundamentally, it's still the same Bitcoin in the sense that we still have 21 million units. We're still on the same cycle, block halving every 4 years, degree difficulty adjustment every 2016. What is it? 2016 weeks or cycles? Yeah. So you have all these existing things in motion, right? So I wouldn't call today's Bitcoin different from the original Bitcoin. So when quantum comes, it may be a hard fork, and then people will either agree and hard fork, or they can disagree and get left behind. So people have a choice, right? A hard fork by definition is people have a choice which path to go down. Yeah, but if you have the private key, you'll have both. You'll have both forks or multiple forks, if you will.
Who will drive that change? Who will drive the upgrade?
I think the community, it's a decentralized approach. I think the core team will come out with proposals. There'll be different proposals that will be debated, tested on the test net. Uh, yeah, I haven't paid too much attention to the details of that. I know people are thinking about it already, but I don't think there's a concrete plan yet. Yeah. But
So,
again, so my answer in essence is I don't know who's going to drive it, but don't take that as a bad thing, because the whole point of Bitcoin is decentralized, right? If I gave the answer, oh, I know exactly who's going to drive it, it's going to be this person or this company or this team. That's actually a bad answer. That's a terrible answer. It would mean that this team, this company would have outsized influence. They would have control over Bitcoin, and the reality is they don't. No one has full control over it.
I want to grab your thoughts on what is your opinion about sort of like the Bitcoin layer twos, the ordinals, and sort of like the runes. So in you would say like in the last year or so, there have been an explosion of sort of Bitcoin like layer twos, promising that hey, we can have a virtual machine on top of Bitcoin. We can simplify how Bitcoin is traded. I think one of the biggest problems is that if you're holding 10,000, 50,000 Bitcoin, you'll have to go through OTC to move the Bitcoin without major price action. And sort of that does not have like a decentralized approach to that. But what is your opinion as a Bitcoin maxi across ordinals, runes, and the layer twos?
I, so I think there are different kinds of Bitcoin Maxi people. Some are very, very strict. I'm not that kind of. So I don't care like much. Um, what they're doing as a regime or protocol on top of Bitcoin is to their liking, right? They're looking at Sats. They're you know enumerating Sats, giving each Satoshi a serial number, if you will, and they have some that are rare, some that are not so rare, and then they trade on the marketplace. People willing to pay more for it. So be it, right? I it's all fits into the existing Bitcoin protocol, so it's legitimate. It's legitimate. It's according to the rules. Bitcoin may change the rules in the future that break it, or maybe Bitcoin doesn't change. That will depend on the market, right? If enough people want it, then Bitcoin will never change the rules to kill off the Sats and the ordinals. But on the other hand, if the market says we don't want this junk, then it'll be considered junk. So I don't know what's going to happen. I can't predict the future. It doesn't bother me. Um, yeah, and the layers two stuff by definition is all layer two above the main layer, right? So I care about on-chain Bitcoin. I'm a supporter and hardcore about on-chain Bitcoin, about have your keys, have your coin kind of perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess that's true and telling from your company Ballet.
Yeah, Ballet, we very much, we designed the product to be on chain for our people, our customers, our users to hold their keys and have have ownership of their coins.
Yeah. So you wrote a book, The Promise of
Yes,
Bitcoin.
promise of Bitcoin.
It's
Yes.
it was just released this year. How was that
Actually,
like?
not
How
this
was
year.
like
It
releasing
was
book?
released a few years ago. It's actually 3 years ago.
Okay.
It's been 3 years now, just right after the pandemic. So it's actually a bestseller. It's a national bestseller, a Wall Street Journal bestseller. So you can get this on Amazon. Now there's three versions available. There's the hardcover version. There's the ebook. You can get it on ebook for Kindles and other ebook readers, and you can also get an audio book. So you could get it on to listen to. So I actually voiced the audiobook as well. Yeah.
That's awesome. How was it like writing a book?
Oh, it was hard. It took a long time, but it's been so long now. I actually started the project in 2018.
Okay.
Finding a book agent. The first thing I had to find a book agent to help me market it, sell it to publisher, and then got a publisher, got an advance payment for that, and then had to write the manuscript and then submitted a lot of editing. So that all happened during the COVID time. So when we were staying at home, so I spent a lot of time during COVID writing, editing the book, and then finally it was published in the spring of 2021, about three and a half years ago. Yeah.
And you talk a lot about Bitcoin. Any advice for, because like one of the common things about being in the crypto industry and talking with people who are not in the crypto industry, they go and take a look at the price of Bitcoin, 75K, and they're like, is it too high? Should I buy it now? I should have bought it like 3 weeks ago before the election or something like that.
Yeah.
Will Bitcoin always go up? How do you think people should think about Bitcoin?
Yeah. So nothing always goes up. Okay, unless the unit you're measuring is just always expanding. All right, so that's a trick question there. You're measuring in a unit. If the unit you're measuring in is fixed, nothing will go up, always go up. But the reason Bitcoin has gone up so much is no different than the reason gold has gone up so much in price of the US dollar. It's because the US dollar, there's printing and there's more expansion of the monetary supply of the US dollar, of fiat currency in general. And that's where Bitcoin has gone up. Bitcoin is fixed at 21 million units. So today in fiat money terms, it's a little bit over, what is it? Over $1.5 trillion. Or 1.5 trillion. So you think about 75,000, but the other way to look at it is 1.5 trillion. That's the price of Bitcoin. Meaning Bitcoin collectively is $1.5 trillion. How do you do that math? You take 20 million Bitcoins in circulation times $75,000 and you get $1.5 trillion. Okay? I think I did the math correctly, hopefully. And the question for the audience is, in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, you look at all the global assets out there. You have the stock market, all the equities in the world. You have the real estate assets, all the real estate, not just in America, but in all of North America, all of Europe, all of Asia, all of Australia, Africa, South America. You add all up, all of that real estate. How much is it? It's in the order of $200 trillion. How much is all the equities, not just the US stock exchange? Japan, Germany, France, Hong Kong, Japan, all these countries on the Brazilian stock exchange, right? All these stock exchange, all the companies that are publicly listed, how much is that? Another $200 trillion. And you take all the private companies, you take all the world's assets and commodities, you're talking about a multi-$100 trillion asset value for the world. And Bitcoin is 1.5 trillion. Okay, so Bitcoin is a small percentage of the global asset class. So the question is it out of whack? Do you believe that Bitcoin is truly a global asset? If so, where should it be? Should it be at 100 trillion or 150 trillion? If it's 150 trillion, it's 100 times from where it is today. Okay, that would make it $7.5 million. That's why a few years ago, people thought, $1 million Bitcoin was a big deal. But to me, $1 million Bitcoin is not a big deal. I think when Bitcoin gets to 5 million, 15, 20 million, 5 million, 7 million, that's when Bitcoin's true value crosses $100 trillion. And by then, how much US dollars in circulation, right? By then, what is the national debt? What is the deficit? What is the global fiat money circulation value, right? So So it's all relative, right?
Right. And how should people think about uh, sort of it getting to that 100 trillion mark or 150 trillion mark? Historically, you could see that Bitcoin has had cycles, but you know, cycles happen every 4 years. Maybe people don't really understand why Bitcoin goes ups and down throughout these four
Yeah.
cycles. So how should people think about that momentum happening?
So I I've seen 2 3 cycles. What is it? Yeah, 2 3 cycles. I can't pretend to be the expert, nor can I even predict that the cycles will be with us forever, right? According to the cycle philosophy, we're entering a bull market cycle now. In fact, 4 years ago, Bitcoin also broke out of its all-time high at that time, $20,000. This is the November of 2020, right? That's when Bitcoin broke $20,000. So people are very excited. Now it's November 2024. Bitcoin broke out of its previous high, which is $69,000, $70,000. And we're in that run. And then if you follow that cycle sort of prediction, 2025 will be a very bullish year. Bitcoin can go up very much. But who knows? I'm turning 50 years old next year, and I've lived on this earth long enough to know that nothing is predictable, right? So we will see, we'll see. But I think in the trend, my long term thing, like I can't promise if you buy Bitcoin the price will go up, because in fact it's almost certain that whoever buys Bitcoin you'll see the price go down. It's almost certain. It's almost like a jinx, right? If you buy Bitcoin, the price will go down. You'll feel like I made a dumb decision. I shouldn't have bought it so high. But the reality is, if you wait long enough, it could maybe reverse where Bitcoin goes back up a lot, and you're like, oh yeah, thank God, thank goodness I didn't sell it, and I still hold on to it, right? Some people buy it high, it goes down, they think they can make a mistake, they sell it, and it goes back up, and they miss the whole thing, and that's a real terrible mistake. But what I can say is, if you're measuring Bitcoin in terms of US dollars, the reason Bitcoin price has gone up is because the US dollar has been deflating. The value of US dollar has gone down. That's why there's inflation in the supermarkets, in the restaurants we go to, when we eat, when we buy things. Why are things more expensive? Because the US dollar we have, the value has gone down, gone down, gone down, gone down. In fact, if you measure it against gold, the US dollar has actually lost 97 to 99% of its value in the last 100 years, right? So it's clear, right? If you keep printing more US dollars, that's why there are more and more millionaires. There's going to be more and more billionaires, right? Now, in the 20, 30, 40 years ago, if you were a millionaire, you're awesome. You're a millionaire. Oh my God, you have $1 million US dollars. Okay. But today, everyone's a millionaire, right? You have to be a billionaire to stand out. And then maybe in 20, 30, 40 years, everyone's a billionaire, and you have to be a trillionaire to stand out. In fact, we're starting to have trillion-dollar companies, right? So we have a handful of trillion-dollar companies. Back then, it was $1 billion company was a big, big deal. But now you have to be a trillion-dollar company to be a big, big deal, right? So that's how it is.
Would you expect that when the US government starts using Bitcoin as a backing towards the US dollar, that the price gap will sort of not split as much? It will sort of trend towards each other?
Yeah, if a country issues its currency that's pegged to Bitcoin, then by definition, the Bitcoin price in the units of that currency will not change. That's the insight, right? If you want for Bitcoin to stay at a fixed price to the US dollar, what you do is simple. You just peg the US dollar against Bitcoin and it'll be fixed. But also means that you cannot print more US dollars. Okay, so it's a double-edged sword, right? But if you want to print more US dollars, you could do that. But by definition, it's going to slip against Bitcoin because Bitcoin is 21 million. Whereas US dollars, if you print more, there's more and more and more and more of it, right? So it's just simple. I mean, you don't have to have a PhD in physics to understand what I'm trying to tell you.
Yeah, I think that's such a valuable insight, and I think it's I guess it's not entirely common understanding. Although it is quite simple, it's not entirely common understanding about how
Exactly.
pegging of currency works and the price action of how Bitcoin works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So we're
exactly
coming
it.
up on the hour. I wanted to sort of bring to a close. I think we talked a lot about really like the promise of Bitcoin and the price of Bitcoin and the direction that is going. I wanted to leave some time for you, Bobby, to maybe give some last words as we close.
Yeah, so I've been in this industry a long time. I hope you guys, people out there, if you're already in the industry, that's great. If you're already investing in Bitcoin, that's great. Many of you are investing in a lot of other altcoins and tokens, and I urge you to beware of false hopes. If you're making risky investments, those are super, super risky. I urge you to think more about Bitcoin itself. I think this should be a core holding. I'm not saying you can't invest in all the other coins, but I think Bitcoin should be a core holding. Feel free to get a copy of my book, read it, listen to it, whatnot, and share that knowledge with your friends and family. There are people out there who are not benefiting from the rise of cryptocurrency. It's sad. So I hope that all of you and your family members and friends get exposure to Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. The other thing is be safe, right? Try not to hold large quantities of your assets and put it on a custodial exchange. Don't do that because you don't know what's going to happen, right? Don't lend it out. That's the other thing. Like don't be tempted by those lending platforms where you lend your crypto to them and you get money. The reality is if they might go bust, they might go bankrupt, they might steal your funds, or they might have your funds stolen and you'll never get your digital currency or Bitcoin back. Right. And when you use wallets, you got to be careful, right? Okay. A lot of wallets are very hard to use. Ballet's card is actually very easy to use, but you have to make sure you use it properly. Make sure you get a genuine Ballet card from Ballet. There are a lot of fraudsters out there who are trying to sell you fake wallets. They're just like they're fake downloads. A lot of fraudsters. I think what I've learned is the world is a big place. A lot of bad people out there, and you got to be careful. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an awesome closing message. Thank you, Bobby, for your time, and thank you everybody for watching. We'll put everything about Bobby in the description, including the promise of Bitcoin, Ballet, and all the socials where you can find him. Thank you, Bobby.
Okay, thank you, Daniel.